Okay, we're all recording. Welcome to Mediumship. Talking to dead people.
Woohoo! So just as a little housekeeping, we have another masterclass coming up next week about crystals, shiny things. I think we probably have a more appropriate name than crystals and shiny things, but I'm going with crystals and shiny things.
Shiny things.
So then after that masterclass, then we're going to be diving into the curriculum of the Mystic Academy. And I am also teaching
my pills, honey. Sorry, James. Didn't know I was alive. Hold on. Let me find the mute button. Oops.
Robin, you can also mute any of the people who can't find the button. So I am offering an Akashic Records course. It's the standalone certification course that I have taught for the last couple of years. If you are enrolled in the Mystics Academy, it is going to be a bonus to you. So you get to participate in that in addition to everything else. If you are not enrolled in the Mystics Academy, make sure you drop me a note and I'll get you all the details on it. I think that's all the housekeeping I have for tonight. Robin, if you have anything else you want to add.
I would just say that some of the other bonuses, if you get enrolled in the Mystics Academy in the next couple of weeks, are you get an Akashic reading with Jami. You get a stone throw with me. So that's another reading and a healing session. And I think we had some other bonuses in there so just dropping out there if you're thinking about it. And you're not sure, you can always reach out to one of us and we'd be happy to have a conversation too.
Robin's friendlier than I am, so you probably want to talk to her.
Truth.
Thanks, Robin. Anyway, so let's dive into talking to dead people. So mediumship is the communication with spirits on the other side of the veil. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, Jen, I know you have, that the veil has been thinning and thinning and thinning. So there are more and more opportunities to communicate with spirit. So I want to really answer any questions you guys have about mediumship. I want to explain to you the pitfalls I have experienced. And I want to talk about how some of us can be really reluctant when it comes to receiving message from spirit, because there's a fear associated with it. And that fear stems from many places. First, society's like, oh, if you can't see it, it's not real. So if you're experiencing something and the adults in your life are telling you that that's not real, it makes you feel like you're crazy. There's something wrong with you. I can't talk about that. I need to just pretend it doesn't exist. That's when a lot of us turn it off. I'm sure that the majority of you, if not all of you, have heard about my childhood experience. I grew up in a house that was early 19th century. It had been a grain mill. And there was an accident in the grain mill where a number of people were killed. My family bought it in probably the 70s. And a lot of the energies from those prior inhabitants still lived there. So I thought everybody had a family that lived in the bedroom at the end of the hallway. Like, I didn't know that was a unique to me experience. I think more kids actually have experiences like that than talk about it, because so many people in their lives are like, oh, stop making shit up. Well, I wasn't making it up. Amy and her family lived in that bedroom. And there was a reason that nobody ever went in that bedroom, because it had a weird energy. I used to love it, but my parents didn't. My dad was very sensitive, and I think he knew what was in that bedroom. And it wasn't harmful. It wasn't frightening. It was just different. And my mother was not comfortable with it. even now, I'm going to be 45 next month, and she still calls it that talking to dead people shit. Super supportive, like unbelievably supportive background I came from. So, so the fact that I didn't squash that and lose that connection is really pretty remarkable. We also have influences from our past lives, like that time we got killed for being a witch, or that time we got drug out into the street and beaten because we were possessed by the devil because we heard voices, or all of the things that have happened to us in various incarnations. We all have a witch wound, even if we don't actively hold ourselves out as being a witch in this incarnation. It is within all of us. And the sheer fact that you are attracted to Robin and me and hanging out in our community tends to indicate that you guys are ready to start healing that wound. So I'm happy you're here. Robin, do you want to add anything to my rambling intro? By the way, I had a cup of coffee. It's this afternoon. Sorry.
Well, Jamie has always been much more comfortable talking to dead people than I have been, because of, what happened as I was a little kid. I saw spirits and things, but I got in trouble for seeing them as well. And so I didn't want to see that stuff anymore. And so then I had a really big aversion to spirits, but they would still come through. And when I was a kid, I sometimes saw things in the mirrors when I would pass by, and that's where the spirits would come through and show themselves to me in the mirrors. And so I, like, even as an adult, I used to, I don't anymore because I've worked through this, but I used to go to a hotel or something, and I would have to like cover all the mirrors because I was afraid to look in the mirrors at night, because that's where the dead people show up.
Like the whole mirror thing, I'm actually buying a house that when the former people who lived in it, they had 2 mirrors in the bathroom across from each other. I'm like, that's just gotta go. Like,
right? Yeah, no. Things show up in mirrors. So, but more recently, the more that I've opened up to doing readings and doing all of the other work that I do, spirits show up. The dead have things to say, and they want to visit their loved ones, and they have messages to bring through, and so they keep showing up. And so I'm learning. Mediumship is a skill that I have, man, I've like held it off because I didn't like the way it was coming through, and I hadn't figured out how to put the same boundaries in place that I have when I open up to do other types of readings for people. So recently I've been, with a lot of Jamie's encouragement and like smacking me upside the head, I've learned how to put some of those boundaries in play. And Jamie doesn't know this, but I actually did my first paid mediumship reading this week.
woohoo!
And it was fantastic. All the specifics that came through, it was really beautiful. So there's so much. It's just another flavor of intuitive ability, of psychic ability, right? And it's just learning how to put how to work with the energy and bring in boundaries and connect and find that clean connection that's yours.
So Robin, you just made a point that I find super valuable, and Roxanne has seen me do readings, so she knows this about me, but I consider myself to be an evidential medium. So that means that when someone in spirit comes through, I ask them to provide me with a piece of evidence. So then I'm not just like, so Anthony, you have an energy around you. Seems like a grandmother. She loves you very much. Like, okay. And really, okay, most grandmothers love their grandchildren. That's probably a pretty safe thing to say. But if your grandmother was a knitter and I'm saying she's coming through with 2 knitting needles and she's like pointing them at me, or you're like those are the types of evidence that I ask for from the spirits that come through to me. And
I just want to pause you there, Jamie, because that's so important what she just said, and it gets missed by so many people. Is she asks for the evidence, right? So you might sense a spirit shows up, and this is one of the things that took me a while to learn as well, that evidentiary mediumship, the key to it is to ask questions, to ask for the ask for that proof. Give me something that this person who knows you is gonna know without a doubt. It's actually you coming through, and I'm not channeling somebody else's grandma who likes to knit.
yeah. And sometimes they're weird ones. But those end up being the best ones, actually. The weirder the image, the better. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention.
Sorry, I disrupted your flow there.
It's okay. It'll come right back in at just the right time. So I want to talk about how I control the flow of information to me from spirit. I have a very strong relationship with my spirit guides, and I have a structure of how I want them to present me with information. So if I'm reading for someone, and I honestly, it gets a little mixed up on Zoom because I'm like, wait, which is left, which is right? Can you raise your left hand for me? Because that's how I assemble people. If it's the mother, it's behind the left shoulder. If it's the father, it's behind the right shoulder, and out from there. And the farther away from the person, the farther the degree of relationship. So I do that often in my mind's eye, which we talked about the clairs last week or the week before. The clairs are critical to receiving message from spirit. And whatever your strongest clair is often how they're going to communicate with you. So
just to review, the clairs are like, are you a knower or a feeler, or like, do you hear them? It's how you perceive the information that's coming to you.
I thought, yeah, do you feel them or hear them? I was like, do you taste them?
Well, I do sometimes taste blood when they're giving me, when I ask for how did you die, I sometimes will taste things.
Yeah.
Bitter or blood, or so that does happen, or a smell. Sometimes
I'm more
I
apt to
something.
smell. Yeah, I smell a lot, like here. I've been in this seat every class we've had, but this is an 1830s farmhouse that my grandma's grandfather bought in the 1890s. So a lot's happened in this house. He was a pipe smoker, and I mean, he's been dead since I think 1946. Every now and then I'll still smell pipe smoke in here, and it's usually when I'm talking about him, so I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up tonight. But no one has smoked a pipe in this house in 80 years, so it's kind of cool. So the clairs, I am generally a seer. I am a seer in my head. So I take the physical representation of the person that I'm reading for, and I overlay my own vision over that. So I think we did this quick little exercise last week too, but always great to do it again. So the place you see in your head is when you imagine what your car looks like. You can see it in your head, or what your kitchen sink looks like. Sometimes maybe we don't want to imagine what our kitchen sink looks like, but you can still see it in your head. that is the place that I see a lot. So it's not always a physical depiction of, you know, a person walking through the door, but I see it in my head. So that's where I get a little confused on Zoom, because I have the person and then it's in my head. I'm like, wait, which is your left, which is your right? So it has been a little bit of a learning curve for me in this setting, but it's fun nonetheless. So then I also have really strict boundaries around when spirit can come through. I don't like to be woken up. I don't want to be scared. So I ask them not to startle me. And I ask them to come during normal waking hours. Like, you have to, like 6 o'clock is okay. Robin probably adjusts that a few hours.
Too early. Wait till I've been awake for an hour before you start pesting show up.
But I do often have energy come through outside those hours. If it is someone who is close to me, or there's some emergent issue that they think I need to know about, then I do receive stuff outside those hours. So it's not like ironclad, but for the most part, it's pretty strict in those parameters. Does anybody have any questions yet?
Well, and I'll just speak while you guys are kind of thinking of some questions. One of the reasons I've been really reluctant with the mediumship is because my primary sense, my primary clair is feeling. I'm a feeler and a knower. And so when spirits were trying to connect with me, they were flooding me with emotion. They were flooding me with feeling. Like they would come through, and someone who had died of a heart attack, I would literally feel like I was having a heart attack. Or someone had been choked or drowned, and they would let me know that by giving me the experience. And at first I was just like, oh, fuck this. I don't want any more of this. I am done talking to dead people. And until I learned how to ask them to tone it down. So now when I ask for that, I ask for it to come through in a gentle manner, just enough so that I'm aware, but not so much that that I actually have to experience the depth of it. So it just comes through a little bit different for me than for Jami.
Jen asked, have you ever had more than one spirit or energy come through at a time? Oh yeah. It depends on the place, really, because some places are just so hot. But last weekend, we did an investigation at the church that I own. I renovated a pre-Civil War church and turned it into an Airbnb. So anybody who wants to come stay, it's super cool. But there were some really interesting anomalies that were occurring there. Like, I felt energies. I've had multiple people have experiences there. So I had a group of investigators come in, and they did a recording that was really, really neat. And it was like, it was definitely a residual energy, but it was a group residual energy, which I had never experienced before. So in this particular process, we played a little bit of it and recorded it. So while we were listening to the hymn, like, you couldn't hear anything. And then when we played the recording back, you could hear the footsteps of the people walking in to sing the hymn. And then after the hymn, you could hear like the whoosh of all the people sitting down. So I thought that was super cool, because in my mediumship, I don't have a lot of communication with whole groups of people. But I have had people vying for my attention, like 2 or 3 people come in at the same time, and I'm just like, whoa, well, one at a time.
Form a line.
Yeah. Robin, what about you?
I'm trying to think if I've had groups. It's usually, I have definitely felt multiple people at the same time show up, and again, I just ask them like I can't work with all of you at the same time, so I need you to step forward and take turns is what I just asked for. It was a lot of fun when Jamie and I were walking through New Orleans earlier this year, and we did the ghost tour. And so as the tour guide is taking us through, Jamie and I are like, oh, he's got it wrong. They're over here. Oh, nope. I don't like this house, man. Up in that corner, bad things. Like it was fun to listen to him give us the tour, and then as we were sensing what was actually present and wasn't present, was pretty cool. And there were multiples at that one house.
I actually got a picture of one where there are people walking, and then there are like extra sets of legs. It was really neat.
Yeah.
Um,
Maya, do you have a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, I do. So I've done some, I just think that it's just, I don't know. Mediumship doesn't come super easy to me, but it doesn't come super hard either. And it's annoying that it's not consistent. So I've done some things in the past. And in fact, even like a few months ago, I signed up for some coaching with this lady on the West Coast. And she had an interesting model to do it where she didn't really teach you anything. She just set you up with clients that she had. And you just, as a student, like went through and did readings with them. And I'm like, this is a little like sketchy, but I did it. And I did a pretty good job. And people were like, oh yeah, hey, that's great. You really tapped into my grandma, my grandpa, my dead, like, ex-boyfriend. But if I'm just hanging out in my house, I don't sense anything. If I'm just, like, if I do energy work for a living, right? I don't always like pick things up from people. And so I feel like I'm not good at it, or I'm not doing it right, or I don't know. I guess so my question is there a way or a experience that can happen to make that more consistent? I don't know. Is it just practice?
Practice is key, but it feels like there's a programming around the expectation of what a medium should be. And if you just let information in all the time, you would be like a heap in the corner.
Right.
It would just be too much.
Right.
So the fact that you walk into a room and don't feel anything is actually a really good skill to have as a medium. It's one that I generally can utilize. Once in a while, it's too much, and I'm like, whoa, can't go in there. But really practicing, and I would suggest you start keeping a journal and you write down all the really cool shit that happens when you're tapped into energy. So then when you're questioning or doubting, you can go back and look at the evidence that you have accessed through your spiritual channel and remind yourself that you are, in fact, absolutely connected, and it helps to dissipate some of the self-judgment. There are times that I'll be doing a reading and I'll look for affirmation or validation from the client. And then I have this internal conversation. And that internal conversation goes like this: what are you doing? You don't need their validation. You know that the information you're getting is totally accurate. Yeah, but it's really weird. And I don't know, like, look at them. They're not even cracking a smile. I don't know if any of this is landing. I want them to have a good experience. Well, and then the other goes, this isn't about their experience. This is about delivering the information that you receive. So all of us go through that. It's just a matter of learning to work through that and be less attached to the information that the person is looking for versus what you're getting.
Right.
You often get what they need, not what they want.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Maya, you also, you do energy work and you're really good at what you do. And so it's taking the same principles that you work with the other things that you do and just kind of shifting them over to this. So if you think about how you turn it on for your energy work, you want to find a process to kind of turn it on for this too and invite it in. And often, like when you're doing sessions with people, you're getting what's most important for them in that moment. And that's
Right.
not always going to be connecting with someone who's passed.
Right. Yeah. And I think that when I'm more like, even when I'm more in tune to that, sometimes I do get some more information with people who have passed, and I don't even like necessarily pass that information on because it's not appropriate at the time. But yeah.
Right. So it's there for you. So it's kind of like, with the energy work, there was a learning curve with that. And it's bringing that same thing into play with this and continuing to, like Jami said, give yourself credit for what's happening, keep a journal, and then keep inviting it in, keep playing with it. And I think you'll find that you can turn the volume up.
And do you guys see what's your difference, your explanation or difference between mediumship and channeling? So like, do you consider channeling mediumship, or do you consider that like this in the same boat or different, or?
So my personal differentiation is that channeling has either a message for me or a message for the greater good, and it's normally from some recognizable energy. Mediumship is a specific soul or spirit coming through with a message, sometimes for me, but typically for someone else. And it's more of a communication. Like I give, I receive. Channeling, I just receive. Robin, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mediumship is a conversation with someone who's died, a specific person, where channeling is more, I'm the receiver for information, and it flows through and it comes from, well, I think you called it a more recognizable entity or straight from source, or from, when I think of channeling, I think more of like Abraham Hicks, or an energy like that comes through someone and has messages for the greater good, the greater population. So it's kind of a collective of energy speaking through, when channeling, where mediumship is a direct conversation with someone who's died.
And I also think that there are some people who are mediums and haven't gotten a handle on it, and the message comes through as channeling because they don't know what to do with it yet. Does that answer your question? I don't want to move on unless you, okay. So Jen said she's also had quite a few people come through during readings that are still living. Yeah, I mean, that happens because souls are dynamic, energetic dissipation of atoms all over. And that energy can come through at any point to anyone receiving message. I often find that souls come through to give a message that they can't, for whatever reason, in their humanity, typically because it involves emotion, and we've been so ingrained to be stoic as humans. So that's my experience. But Robin, have you had that experience?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've worked with spirits of living people who have messages, and I just, in my own head, I kind of just define that differently. I guess I don't have a term for that, but to me, mediumship has always been defined as talking to someone who's died, but that absolutely happens too during a reading or doing other things where a living spirit that for whatever reason has something to communicate from their higher self will come through and share that.
Beth asked for an example. Do you have an example you want to share, or do you want me to?
I will sometimes have an individual's higher self come through to share some background on their behavior and kind of where it's coming from. When I'm reading one person, sometimes like a spouse or a parent or even a child might come through and share something that that person needs to know. I've also had well, babies talk to me, unborn babies, when they're still in their mom's tummy. Um, they sometimes will take over a reading completely and start informing their mom how to raise them. I had one reading that I was doing, and it was I had grandma, mom, the daughter who was pregnant, and then the baby who took over the reading and started explaining like who she was in previous lifetimes and how it was going to be difficult for each of them to be, you know, like be in relationship with her when she was born, and like explaining how they could help her and help each other and what she was going to need from them. And it was wild. It was
Love
really
it.
cool. But so that would be an example where a living spirit came through and had a lot to say.
I've also had, I find that mother-in-laws come through a lot. And I don't know really, like maybe I have my own mother-in-law shit to work through. My mother-in-law, for those of you who don't know, she's a lovely woman, but she's a Lutheran minister. So just by virtue of who I am, it's a little incongruent. But anyway, but normally they're coming through and acknowledging like some core wounding that their son has, or that the woman I'm reading for is having to work through and address her own trauma around that core wounding that the son has, and the mother-in-law is coming through to acknowledge that it's not the person I'm reading for's fault. And clearly that's got something to do with me, because it comes through, it's happened more than once for me.
Not saying anything, Jamie.
My husband's a saint, that's what you said, right? Jen said, I had a guy come through for his friend. The guy was incarcerated and not allowed visitors. The friend was pretty shocked to hear from them this week. That's super cool though.
That's really cool. Yeah. Jamie, one of the things that we were going to talk about tonight is can I turn it off? And what if I'm scared? How do I make myself more comfortable with this? So maybe you want to jump on those?
I was frozen.
Oh. Well, questions that we were going to cover tonight are how, like, can I turn it off? And if I'm scared, what can I do to make myself more comfortable?
Okay, can I turn it off? Yes, you can turn it off. Like we talked about earlier, setting boundaries and really strict rules. And you can say, I am not available to receive information, or I'm not available to participate right now. Come back at 5 o'clock. You don't have to tell them to come back at 5 o'clock, but that's an example. So if you are continuing to receive message after you say, I'm done, don't communicate with me tonight, that means you have some pretty significant leaks in your energy field. And the best way to address those is confidence in yourself and communication with your spirit guides. So that's for me. Robin doesn't use her spirit guides the same way I do. So Robin has her own process, which I'm excited to hear about. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to move on to the next question? We can come back.
Yeah, no, I can touch on that quickly. Like Jamie has assigned spirit guides, like this guide helps her with this and this guide helps her with that. And it doesn't really work that way for me. And so when we talk about like when things are happening outside of the boundaries that you set, I ask for the guide to come. I have a protector guide and I'll ask for his help to enforce, like he's the bouncer.
He's hot too.
He is.
I've met him.
He likes it when you acknowledge that as well. He's very stoic, but he kind of quietly like he stands up a little taller when you say that. So when I need those boundaries enforced, I call on Ian and he will kind of step forward and do that. So in this case, I actually do have a specific guide that I work with, but most of the time when I'm working, it's kind of just a direct connection with spirit, with source, and I invite in my teachers, my allies, who can help me the most. And so, one day it might be a wolf that shows up to help me, and another time it might be Ian, and another time it might be a shaman that I've worked with in past lives who shows up, and another time it might be Kuan Yin who shows up to help out. So mine is a little bit more open in that I work with the ally that's most appropriate in the moment, rather than having like specifically assigned guides for different things. So it's a little bit different. But I absolutely agree with Jamie that whenever things like that are happening, it's usually because of your own fears. Your own fear is why there's leaks in the energy field. Fear creates those leaks in your energy field. And so it's really about returning to a place of love within yourself, of finding that energy of love and holding on to that, and finding that safety and security within. And so whenever spirits show up outside of where they're supposed to, or when it's a really heavy energy that shows up, the way that I send it away is not to banish it, is not to get nasty about it, but is really to flow just as much loving energy as I can, and remind that energy, like this isn't your place, this isn't your home, this is not
What
where
you do
you
with my
belong.
glasses, honey?
Send them back to source. So, but with lots of love. It isn't about, you want to stay out of the energy of fear and really hold yourself in that space of love as you're doing that work.
What you
Okay,
do with
so
my glasses?
Robin, do you want to mute everybody?
Yep, got it.
Okay, so then the second one, or the second piece of that was how do I keep from being scared, right? Is that an adequate paraphrase? And for me, it is a matter of intention. So when I'm ready to open to have communication, hi, Luna Bug. See, Luna loves talking to dead people.
Yes.
When I'm ready to open for communication, whether I'm going to do a reading or my own meditation or whatever it is, I'm very intentional about setting space, and I go through a routine. Sometimes I change that routine up, but I make sure that I have all the things that set the energy for me. So incense or a candle is important to me. And I know, call me a bad witch, but I hate Palo Santo. So I never use that. But it's whatever makes you comfortable. So for me, I light incense and I arrange my space with a crystal or a card or whatever I'm called to do. Robin has a really beautiful process of opening sacred space. And I don't know if you do that every day, every time, but it's a beautiful ceremonial opening of
Every
sacred
time.
space. So I recommend that you create your own ritual to make your space safe and sacred. And it doesn't have to be complicated or long. It can be relatively quick and effective, but it has to be intentional and thought out. You can't just like throw shit together and be like, okay, that made me some sacred space. You want to be really aware of what you're doing and put all of the pieces that are important to you in place for that. I like the elements. So I'm always very intentional to have a representation of all of the elements with me when I'm creating that safe space. And then the next step for me is to ask for small steps. So if you're new to the process of communicating with dead people, you don't want to dive right in and be like, okay, so I need to know who murdered John Benet Ramsey, and I want to know where the murder weapon was or whatever. Like, don't dive into the deep end if you've never been in a pool. Ask gentle, slow, fairly simple questions, such as, give me some indication that I'm connected with spirit. And that indication can be something like the light flickers, or you hear a thump in the wall, or you feel your arm get very cold. So notice those, and that is how you start to build your confidence. Little steps, without telling yourself, oh, well, that wasn't enough, and asking for more. Accept, receive, and acknowledge the information that comes through, small as it is.
You can definitely
Love it.
ask for an amplification of the sign, right?
Sure.
If you know, you can ask, okay, I think I got your sign. Could you amp it up just a little bit so I can be, you know, but you really want to acknowledge, give gratitude first before you ask for that amplification. And I just want to go back to the creating sacred space for a moment. Sacred space is really important because this is how you hold your boundaries, and this is how you keep from inviting in spirits that you don't want to hang out and linger. So when you create sacred space, whatever ritual you choose to create, it's very important that you're intentional about what you're about to do. Like, who are you wanting to connect with, and be very intentional about who you invite in. So when I call in my allies, I call specifically on specific energies to come in, and I let them know this is your responsibility. Your responsibility is to protect my space. Your responsibility is to help me stay in the energy of impeccability. Your responsibility is this. So be very intentional about who you call in, their responsibilities, and why you're opening sacred space, what you're about to step into, so that you have that nice container to work in. And then always close your sacred space. Thank your guides, thank your allies, thank those who came in to support you, and release them from it when you're finished.
Awesome. That's a great addition. Jen asked, how do you handle it when none of the info you've received resonates with your client? So I used to, when I first started, start to panic and be like, oh shit, I didn't get anything. I don't know. And now I'm like, tuck that away in the back of your mind, take a note, put it in your purse, do whatever. Someday it will resonate for you. And I'm able to detach from that now. But there was a time when I was definitely not able to detach from that. And now I'm just like, yeah, it'll work some point, 10 years from now. And I have had people come back years later and be like, do you remember you told me this? And I'm like, who are you? What was your name again? Because I don't. Like, it's your information. I don't keep any of it. So like, I'll remember instances and like, and scenarios, but I don't remember the information or the energy or anything that comes through, especially in Akashic readings. So it's easy for me to let go. How about you, Robin?
Same. Early on, that would be devastating. I would be like, oh my God, I failed. This is, like, oh, I would get really, that was a real struggle. But I understand now my job is simply to deliver. My job isn't to receive. My job isn't to tell you what to do with what I deliver. That's up to you. And I often will say the same things like, okay, just tuck that away because it may have meaning for you later, or it might apply later. And I always think back to myself, like I've been to a medium and had family members come through and like nothing was hitting for me. And until finally, like something hit and I was like, oh, that's my Uncle Fred, right? Well, then I'll talk to my little sister about it later. And my little sister is like the family historian. And I'll be like, well, the medium said this and then this. And she's like, that's Uncle Fred, like right away. She knows. And I'm like, how do you? And she's like, I can't believe you can't remember that detail. And I'm like, but
Right.
that didn't.
She's
I
like, how do
didn't.
you not?
Exactly. So I always think back to those times where I've received information and it didn't click in the moment, but later it was like, oh, duh, of course, that was, this person.
I love it. There was something, I don't know. Oh, this morning I was getting a weird message. So the opposite sometimes happens for me. Like you get a message and it doesn't land for the client. Sometimes I get a message and I don't know who it's for. So I was getting ready this morning. It's been a rough week in my house. One dog has been super sick. The other one got neutered. My husband's been out of town. So it's been like literally a shit show for me. So this morning I'm getting ready and I kept getting this message about letting things lie, like stop stirring the pot. And I'm like, I am not stirring the pot. I am a pot stirrer, admittedly, but I'm not stirring the pot right now. So I still don't know who that message was for. When it's right, it will pop in and I'll deliver it. But sometimes you just have to roll with it and not really worry about where it lands. The question, one of the questions that was sent to me ahead of time was, is Teresa Caputo an actual medium? So here's my take. Now, one cool thing you're going to notice is that Robin and I very rarely have the same opinions on stuff. So like we're super interested in everyone else's opinion too, because ours aren't the same. So like we want to know yours. My opinion is, yes, she has the ability to connect to dead people, and it is completely jacked up for TV.
Unethical.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What
Yeah.
she shows goes against everything I believe in her TV show of walking up to total strangers in the grocery store and just starting to deliver messages. Like, no. We don't, that's a big no-no in terms of like, you're taking away their choice. And it's a choice whether or not someone wants to receive messages. I may get tapped. I may have a spirit who taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, I have something to say. But you have to, like, there's a permission that needs to be pulled from the other person. And I see the comment, they had to sign a waiver, it's not spontaneous. And so I'm not necessarily speaking of what Teresa does, that what she's doing is unethical. It's what they're showing on TV, what they're teaching people, that it's okay to do that it's okay to like meddle in other people's business without permission.
And it does create an unrealistic expectation for going to receive a mediumship or psychic reading.
Yeah.
Because there very rarely are there fireworks and fanfare. Like, it's normally like your grandfather said that the wedding ring is in a stream, a body of water somewhere, and you're not getting it back. Like,
yeah, I think Henry, do you know what, there's a Netflix, he's got a Netflix documentary and a couple
oh,
books
it's a
out
kid.
there.
Is that a kid who does
He's
readings through
really
stars or
young.
something?
Yeah, and Henry is a pretty good example of a mediumship reading. I mean, I would say that his are much more true to form.
I've not seen it. I've heard about it though.
Although there are things that, oh yeah, Tyler Henry, thank you. Tyler Henry, there are also things that they show through the Netflix where, like, you'll see Tyler Henry where he's completely exhausted and has to like rest in bed all day the next day after doing readings. And that would, to me, there's something going wrong there if that's the case, because it shouldn't exhaust, like, it just shouldn't exhaust you to that degree.
I actually have the opposite experience. It like energizes me.
Yeah. So there's a lot of mediums out there, and there's a lot of what I think is really interesting, and it's really interesting to pay attention to different mediums and how they do it and what tools they use and how it works for them, because I think it will also show you the variety and just reinforce that it's going to be different for everybody. And while to me it seems wrong that you're exhausted the next day, obviously it's working for Tyler. It's working really, really well for him. So for me to label it wrong is actually wrong. But
There's no right and wrong here.
yeah, it's not been my experience that you would be exhausted afterwards unless you're pulling at your own energy in the process.
Now, I have done like marathon events where I've been exhausted just by virtue of talking for the last 10 hours.
Right,
But
you did a full day's work.
right, but not like have to go and not be able to get out of bed. But everyone does have their own experience. Like, some people don't want to eat meat or don't eat a lot at all on days that they're reading. And that's totally a personal determination. And if you want to try it and see how it works for you, do it.
I think a lot of it stems back to what you believe. If you believe that that's going to help you, then you're probably going to experience it that way. And if you go into it as an experiment, you might just learn, like, does it matter? Does it not matter?
For me personally, since I have really delved into my spiritual connection, I have noticed that alcohol has very little effect on me anymore. However, I have a harder time connecting if I have had alcohol, and totally could be programming, like some psychological thing, like the alcohol has been out of my system for 18 hours and I'm still like, I had 3 sips of wine. So whatever works for you, to me, it doesn't matter why it works. If it works and it's not harmful, run with it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Does
Does anybody
anyone
have
have
There we go, finishing each other's. Does anybody have a last question before we wrap up? Or anything that they want to share quick?
All right, well, Kristen logged on and then fell right off. So hi, Kristen. Bye, Kristen. Thanks for popping on for a second.
Here.
Hi, we can't see you anymore.
Oh,
Oh,
It's
I
okay.
can. It might be.
Oh,
just
there you
me.
are. Oh, you just popped up. Hi.
Hi.
So if anybody has any questions that come up or after you get the replay and you want to ask more questions, let us know. And we'd love to see you in our crystal class.
And we are also gonna set up a Ask Me Anything session as well. We just haven't, Jamie and I haven't had a chance to pick the date for that. So pay attention to your emails and watch for the next one. Join us again. Send us your questions if you have them. And please check out the Mystics Academy, because if you've been enjoying these classes, let me tell you, the Mystics Academy is going to go so much deeper. And yeah, it's all the goods.
Yeah. Thanks for popping on, and go talk to dead people. They're super fun.
And let us know how it goes.
Yes.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Robin. Talk to you later.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye-bye.